So you use AI to generate a web page, and it looks okay, but it's a black box. Here's the AI problem. You start with your prompt. It goes into this AI black box, and out comes code you can't really read. And that leads to a really fragile layout. So you try to make a tiny change, something simple like move the button 5 pixels, and the whole layout just shatters. The frustration is real. But this video ends that frustration. This is our target code. On the left, you can see all the CSS with things like variables, display grid, and Flexbox. On the right, you've got the HTML that structures the page. I know, it looks a little intimidating right now. Don't worry about it, because my promise to you is simple. In 30 minutes, you will understand every single line. Here's what you are going to master. 1. Semantic HTML. That's the blueprint, using tags like nav and main. 2. CSS variables, for making reusable themes like var -- accent. 3. Flexbox, for one-dimensional alignment with display flex. 4. Grid, for two-dimensional layouts using display grid. Then, we'll cover fluid typography to make your text scale perfectly with the clamp function. And finally, responsive design, so your layout adapts to mobile using @media queries. This is the foundation. Let's begin. All right, let's get right into it. Before you paint the house, you absolutely must build the frame. And it's the exact same idea when we're building a web page. HTML defines the structure, not the style. That's the most important thing to understand. It creates the rooms, it places the furniture, but it doesn't choose the paint color. We'll do that later. So let's look at the skeleton for our page. You can see in this diagram, we start with the body, which is like the entire house. Inside that, we have 2 main rooms, a nav for the navigation bar and a main for the primary content. And then inside those rooms, you can see the furniture, the logo, a header, a paragraph. You get the idea. It's our page blueprint. And really, it's just 2 rooms. We're keeping it simple. Now, you've probably seen div tags everywhere. And here's the thing. A div is just a generic box. That's it. It's a container, but it doesn't tell you anything about what's inside. And that's why we use Semantic. These are smart boxes. Instead of a generic div, we use tags like nav, main, article, section, header, and footer. You can see the list here on the slide. The key is these tags describe their own meaning, not just their structure. And this gives us a massive clarity upgrade. I mean, look at this. The old way on the left is just a confusing mess of divs, but the semantic way on the right, it's clean. Nav, main, the code explains itself. So how does this apply to our project? Well, as you can see in this diagram, we're mapping our structure to these elements. We use a nav tag to hold the top bar with the logo and links. We use a main tag to hold the entire 2-column grid layout. And we wrap each feature card in an article tag because each card is a self-contained piece of content. See? It all just clicks. Okay, moving on from the big boxes to what goes inside them. Text needs hierarchy. You can't just throw a wall of text at your user. You need to guide them. And the main way we do that is with headings. HTML gives us heading 1 through heading 6. As you can see here, H1 is the most important, all the way down to H6, which is the least important. It creates a clear visual ranking. Of course, besides headings, we have other text elements. You've got your standard P tag for a paragraph. We have M for emphasis, which usually shows up as italics. We have strong for, well, strong importance, which renders as bold. And we have the code tag for showing inline code snippets. Here's a quick reference of all those typography tags together. Headings for hierarchy, paragraphs for standard text, emphasis, strong, code, and finally A for clickable links, which we'll cover in just a second. Let's look at our project's typography. We have an H1 that says Master Modern CSS, but notice we wrapped the word modern in an M tag to give it that extra emphasis. Below that, we just have a simple P tag for the tagline. And what's cool is, even with 0 CSS applied, the browser itself adds some default styling. That's the power of using the right tags. Okay, so our page has structure and text, but right now, it's an island. We need to connect it to the world. And we do that with links and images. The A tag, or anchor tag, creates a clickable link. Its most important attribute is href, which tells the browser the destination. The MG tag, obviously, is for an image. Its key attribute is src, or source, which is the path to the image file. And critically, you always need to include an alt attribute. This provides alternate text for screen readers, which is huge for accessibility. And there it is, the complete blueprint. You can see all the pieces we just talked about coming together. We've got the nav with a link, the H1 and P tags in the main content, and the article cards ready for their content. When you boil it all down, it's just boxes within boxes. That's all HTML is. Once you see it that way, it's not intimidating at all. The skeleton is ready. The frame is built. Time to paint. Okay, our HTML blueprint is solid. But let's be honest, it looks a little naked. And this is where we separate the functional from the fantastic. The difference between a website that just works and one that is stunning is polish. So let's start with the most fundamental part of that polish, web typography. Because it's not just about picking a font, it is an art. The most basic property you'll use is font family. For example, here we have font family set to Georgia, serif. This tells the browser to try Georgia first, but if the user doesn't have it, just use any standard serif font it has. It's a fallback system. Same idea for Arial with sans serif or Courier for monospace. Simple enough. Next up, font weight. This controls the thickness of the letters. It's usually a number. 300 is light, 400 is your standard regular weight, 700 is bold, and 900 is that really heavy black style. But typography isn't just the letters, it's the space around them. First, let's look at line height. In this first example, the line height is 1.0. Everything is super tight. It's really hard to read. But when you bump that up to 1.6, the lines have room to breathe. It's so much easier on the eyes. We can also control letter spacing. You can use a negative value to make the letters tighter, or a positive one to spread them out for effect. Okay, let's talk about a big one, font size. And your choice here really matters. First, you have px, or pixels. They are fixed. 16 pixels is always 16 pixels. The problem? This completely ignores the user's accessibility settings, like if they need to zoom their browser text. Not good. So the modern choice is rem, which stands for root M. It's relative to the root font size of the page. So if the default is 16 pixels, 1 rem equals 16 pixels, and 1.5 rem equals 24 pixels. What's the magic? If the user zooms their browser, your rem-based sizes scale right along with them. Now, you might also see them. Be careful with this one. M is relative to its direct parent's font size. This can get you into trouble. Look at this example. If the parent is 20 pixels, a child set to 1.5 m becomes 30 pixels. Makes sense. But if that child has its own child, a grandchild, also at 1.5 m, it's not 30 pixels. It's 1.5 times its parent, so it becomes 45 pixels. See? It compounds and can get out of control fast. Which brings us to the best choice, especially for headings, clamp. It looks a little weird at first, but it's pure genius. It takes 3 values, a minimum, a preferred, and a maximum. So in this H1 example, the font size wants to be 5 VW. That's 5% of the viewport width, so it scales with the screen. But it will never get smaller than 1.5 rem, and it will never get bigger than 3 rem. You get perfectly controlled, fluid typography. It's amazing. So here's a quick cheat sheet. px is fixed. Use it sparingly. Rem is relative to the root, and it's predictable, perfect for most text. M is relative to the parent, and it compounds. And clamp gives you fluid sizing, which is best for headings. The rule is simple. Use rem for most text and clamp for headings. Let's put it all together and design our main heading. First, font family is instrument serif for that classic, elegant feel. Font weight is 400. Normal, not too heavy, very refined. Font size uses our new best friend, clamp, to be perfectly responsive. And now for the pro touches. A line height of 0.95 to tighten up the vertical rhythm for a more compact, dramatic look. And a slightly negative letter spacing to pull the characters a little closer together. Look at the result. That's not just text, that's intentional design. Okay, typography is looking great. Now for color. And I'm going to tell you something that will save you hours of pain. Hard-coding colors is a rookie mistake. The modern way? Define once, use everywhere. And we do this with something called CSS variables. Step 1 is to define your palette. We do this inside a special selector called :root. This is the perfect place for global variables. Here we've created 3, --ink for our text, --paper for our background, and --accent for our highlight color.
Step 2 is to use them. Instead of writing a hex code, you just use the var function and pass in the variable name. So the body's background becomes var-paper. The text color becomes var-ink. So clean. So why is this so powerful? What's the big aha moment? What if you want to add dark mode? With this system, you just swap the variables. Look at this. On the left, our light theme in the root. On the right, we create a new rule for when the body has a class of dark mode. And all we do is redefine --ink and --paper. We just swap their values. That's it. Same HTML, same component CSS. You just changed 2 lines of code and your entire site has a beautiful dark theme. It's like magic. All right, we've mastered text, we've mastered color. Now it's time to master the box itself. It's time to control the space. Let's look at a few key visual tools. First, border radius. This just rounds the corners. 0 pixels is a sharp corner, but as you can see, you can increase the value to get a soft curve, all the way to 50% to turn a square into a perfect circle. Next is overflow. This decides what happens when content is too big for its box. By default, it's visible and just spills out. But if you set it to hidden, it cleanly clips off anything that goes outside the boundary. This is super useful. Next up, transition. This lets you animate property changes smoothly. Look here, without a transition, a color change is an instant jarring jump. But if we add transition background 0.3 seconds ease, you get that beautiful, smooth fade. And finally, a lifesaver for images, object fit. It controls how an image fills its container. Fill will stretch and distort it, which looks awful. Contain will fit it inside, but can leave empty gaps. But cover fills the space perfectly by scaling the image up and cropping it without ever distorting it. This is almost always what you want. And with these tools, your components now look polished. They look professional. Everything is controlled. But there's one last problem. Everything looks great, but it's all still just stacked, one thing on top of another. It's time to fix the layout. It's time for you to meet the king of alignment. Its name is Flexbox. So what is Flexbox, and why should you care? Here's the core idea. I want you to imagine your elements are just blocks on a shelf. As you can see in this diagram, you've got item A, item B, and item C, just sitting there in a single line. This is a one-dimensional shelf. Without Flexbox, these blocks are pretty dumb. But when you turn that shelf into a Flexbox shelf, you get superpowers. You can push them to opposite ends of the shelf. You can group them all together right in the center. You can spread them out perfectly evenly. And my favorite, you can center them both vertically and horizontally with almost no effort. It's incredible. Okay, let's get practical. Here's our goal. We're going to build a navigation bar. We want the logo on the left and the links on the right, all centered perfectly in the middle. But look at the current HTML with no CSS. The logo and the links are just stacked on top of each other. It looks awful. We have to fix this. Let's do it in 3 simple steps. Step 1, activate Flexbox. The first thing we do is tell the parent container, in this case our nav tag, that it's now in charge of its children. We give it the magic switch. In our CSS, for the nav element, we write display::flex. And the result? Instant change. The moment you do that, the children, the logo, and the links immediately snap into a row. It's that easy. Okay, step 2, control the main axis. They're in a row now, but they're all scrunched up on the left side. We want to push them to opposite ends. For this, we use a property called justify content. And the value we want is space between. So we add it to our rule, justify content: space between. And look at the result, spaced out. Flexbox puts the first item at the start, the last item at the end, and shoves all the empty space right in the middle. Perfect. We're so close. Final step. Step 3, control the cross axis. This is the vertical alignment. To make sure everything is perfectly centered vertically inside the container, we add one last property, align items: center. And that's it. Perfection. The result is a beautifully aligned navigation bar. Logo on the left, links on the right, perfectly centered.
Now, here's a quick cheat sheet for you. For that horizontal control, you use justify content. You can use flex start, flex end, center, or the space between we just used. For vertical control, you use align items. You can use flex start to put things at the top, flex end for the bottom, or center for, well, the the center. But what if you don't want a row? What if you want to stack things? For that, you use Flex Direction. By default, it's row, which gives you that horizontal line, but you can change it to column and bam, everything stacks up vertically. This is so powerful for centering content inside a section. And what happens if your items are too big for the container? That's where Flex Wrap comes in. The default is Rown Wrap, where items just overflow or get squished. Not great. But if you set it to wrap, they'll neatly wrap onto the next line when they run out of space. Another lifesaver is the gap property. Instead of using old margin hacks to create space between items, you can just say gap:10 pixels. And Flexbox will put perfect, consistent spacing only between the items. It's so clean. And what about making things fill up empty space? For that, we use Flex Grow. Look at this example. If all items have a Flex Grow of 0, they just take up their own space, leaving a big empty area. But if we give the middle item a Flex Grow of 1, it expands to fill all the available empty space. And if we give all the items a Flex Grow of 1, they share the space equally. Finally, you'll often see this Flex Shorthand property. For example, Flex:1 is just a quick way to make all items grow and create equal width columns. Or you can create layouts with a fixed item and a fluid item that grows. Or even create proportional columns, like a 2:1 ratio. It's incredibly flexible. So here's the main takeaway. When you are thinking about a one-dimensional layout, like a row of cards or a vertical list, you should immediately think Flexbox. It is the king. But what about the big picture? Flexbox is for a single row or a single column. What about a whole page? What about 2 dimensions, rows and columns at the same time? For that, we must enter the grid. Think of it this way. Flexbox handles the line. Grid handles the picture. Flexbox is for one-dimensional layouts. It's either a row or a column. But grid is 2-dimensional. It's for rows and columns at the exact same time. The best way to think about it is like a spreadsheet. You're defining a literal grid structure for your page. Look at the structural difference here. With Flexbox, items just flow in a line, one after the other. With Grid, you create a rigid structure, like cells in a table, and you place items directly into that structure. This is the key to modern page layouts. So let's build one. Our goal is to create the main page layout. We need to split the page into 2 nice equal columns. We'll have our text content on the left and that grid of cards on the right. If you look at the HTML structure, it's just 2 main divs inside the main tag. And right now, without any CSS, they're just stacked on top of each other. Not a great look. Let's fix it. Step 1. Activate Grid. Just like with Flexbox, we target the container, which is our main element, and we tell it display:grid. And the result? Nothing. Visually, nothing changes at all. And that's because by default, a grid just has 1 column. We've turned it on, but we haven't given it any instructions. It's still just stacking everything. But now, for the single most important line of CSS in the entire grid universe. Are you ready? It's called Grid Template Columns. This one property is where all the magic happens. And to use it, we need to learn a new unit, the FR unit. FR stands for fractional unit. It's a beautifully simple idea. If you write 1FR, 1FR, you're telling the browser, take all the available space and split it into 2 equal parts. It does all the math for you. So let's do it. Step 2, define the columns. We go back to our main rule. We have display, grid, and on the next line, we add grid template columns, 1FR, 1FR. And look at that. Instantly, a perfect 2-column grid. The text content is in the first 1 fraction column, and the card grid is in the second 1 fraction column. That's it. And this is so flexible. You can create all sorts of patterns. As you see in this table, 1FR, 1FR gives you a 50-50 split. But you could do 1FR, 2FR for a layout where one column is twice as big as the other. Or what about 200 pixels 1 fraction? That gives you a fixed sidebar and a fluid content area that takes up the rest of the space. You can even use the repeat function to make, say, 3 equal columns. It's incredibly powerful. Okay, last step for our main layout. Step 3, add some breathing room. The columns are touching and it looks a little cramped. Just like with Flexbox, we can use the gap property to separate the tracks. We'll just add gap 2.5 rem. Think of this as the gutter between your columns. And the result is a clean, professional layout. Beautiful. So, we have a grid, it's looking good. Now, let's get a little crazy. Let's put a grid inside our grid. Time for example 2, the cards. Inside that right column, we need a 2x2 grid of articles. Right now, just like before, they're all stacked vertically. Card 1, card 2, card 3, card 4, all in a single column. So, how do we fix it? What do you think we need to do? Here's the best part. It is the exact same pattern. You already know how to do this. We just apply the same logic to the .cards container. We say display, grid. Then we define our columns. Grid template columns, 1 for 1 fur. And we add a little gap, 1 rem. And bam, a perfect 2x2 grid. Grid handles the rows for us automatically. It places the first 2 items in the 2 columns we defined, sees the row is full, and just creates a new row for the next 2 items. This is called auto placement. You can see how it works. Item 1 goes into column 1. Item 2 goes into column 2. The first row is now full, so Grid says, okay, time for a new row, and places item 3 in column 1 of the new second row and item 4 in column 2. It just works. Now, you have more control if you need it. You can explicitly define rows with grid template rows, using fixed heights or fractional units. You can make an item span multiple cells using grid column or grid row. For example, you could make a header that spans all 2 columns. And you can align items inside their cells using place items, centering them or stretching them to fill the space. The toolbox is deep, but the core philosophy, the big takeaway, is this. Use Grid for the overall page layout, the big picture, and use Flexbox for the alignment of items inside each of those grid areas. They work together perfectly. Our layout is done. It's perfect. It's beautiful. But wait, pull out your phone. Check your phone. What do you see? You see a mobile problem. The text is tiny. The cards are squished. Our beautiful 2-column desktop layout, it breaks. And that is what we're going to solve next. Here's the thing. A great site isn't just structured. It feels alive. It responds to you. It adapts. And that is what we're going to build right now. First up, quick win number 1, interactivity. Static links, they just feel dead. When you move your mouse over them, nothing happens. It's boring. We can fix that in about 10 seconds. Step 1, the hover state. We're going to define how a link looks when the mouse is over it. Look at this CSS. First, we have the default state. For .nav links A, we'll set the opacity to 0.5. This makes them look a little faded out by default. Next, we define the hover state using a pseudo class, .nav links A : hover. And inside, we just set the opacity to 1. So when your mouse is over it, it becomes fully visible. As you can see here, the default text is faded, and on hover, it's bright. But here's the challenge. It snaps instantly. It's jarring. We need to smooth it out. Step 2, make it smooth. We're going to tell the browser to animate that change. Back in our default state, the .nav links A rule, we add one single line. Transition : opacity 0.3s. That's it. That's the magic. Now, instead of snapping, the opacity animates smoothly from 0.5 to 1 over 0.3 seconds. The result is a smooth, professional fade. It's a tiny detail that makes everything feel more polished. All right, quick win number 2, fluid typography. You've seen this before. The heading looks perfect on your big desktop monitor. Then you check your phone, and it's massive. Only one word fits on the screen. It's a classic problem. Meet your new secret weapon, the clamp function. Here's the fluid formula. You're going to want to remember this. Clamp takes 3 values, a minimum, a preferred, and a maximum. The min is the floor. It will never get smaller than this. The preferred reinforces is the target. This is usually based on the viewport width, or VW, so it can scale with the screen. And the max is the ceiling. It will never get larger than this. So, how do we implement it? Let's look at the H1 tag in our project. We're going to add this one magic line. Font size : clamp with 2.5 rem, 5 VW, and 4 rem. Let's break that down. First, 2.5 rem is our minimum size, perfect for phones. Second, 5 VW. This tells the browser to try and make the font size 5% of the screen's width. This is what makes it scale. And finally, 4 rem is our maximum. This caps the size so it doesn't look ridiculous on giant monitors. One line of code for perfectly responsive text. How cool is that? Okay, time for the final piece of the puzzle. Quick win number 3, responsive layout. We need to solve the squish problem. On a desktop, our 2-column layout looks amazing, but on a phone, it just breaks. The columns get way too narrow, the content is unreadable,
2 columns is simply too wide for a phone screen. So what's the logic here? We need to tell the browser, if the screen is small, then switch to a different layout. And we do that with something called media queries. As you can see in this diagram, the browser loads, it checks the width. Is it less than 800 pixels? If no, it keeps the 2 columns. But if yes, it switches to 1 column. It's just a simple if statement. And here is the syntax. We write @media, and then in parentheses, max width : 800 pixels. Then we open up our curly braces. The rules we put inside here will only apply to small screens. This line is literally saying, if the screen is 800 pixels or less, do this. So we're going to create a responsive override. By default, on a desktop, our main element has display grid, and grid template columns is 1FR, 1FR, 2 equal columns. But then we add our media query. At media max width 800 pixels, we target main again, and we options that rule. We just say grid telecolumns : 1FR. That's it. Stack them up. And the result is perfection. On a desktop, you get the beautiful side-by-side layout. And on mobile, it gracefully switches to a clean, stacked, single-column layout that's easy to read. It just works. So let's do a quick chapter recap. First, we added interactivity with the hover pseudo class and the transition property. Second, we created fluid text that scales beautifully using the clamp function. And third, we made our layout fully responsive using @media queries. You have learned how to take a rigid design and make it feel alive. You are now in control.
You've done it. We've reached the end of our journey together. Now, I want you to take another look at something. Remember this from the very beginning? That big, scary block of code. The one that looked like a completely different language. But look at it now. It's not scary anymore, is it? You can actually read it. You see the Flexbox being used for alignment, and the grid for that perfect 2-column layout. You see the logic. You understand the structure. Because it's no longer intimidating. And this is the entire point of what we've just done. You are no longer at the mercy of AI. You don't have to just blindly copy and paste code and pray that it works. You don't have to feel helpless when something breaks. Because you are now in control.